Welcome back to Grifter Gifted, the show where we try to figure out if someone is changing the world or just lining their pockets. And today we're going to be looking into the work of Sarah Parcak. She calls herself the space archaeologist.
You got it. She's been making some pretty big claims about using satellite imagery to find, like, ancient cities and tombs and pyramids. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it sounds pretty high tech. But how does that even work? Like, can you really see ancient ruins from space?
Well, it's not quite as simple as just taking pictures from orbit and going, there's a pyramid.
Right.
Parcak and her team, they analyze all sorts of data that satellites collect, like the shapes of the land, the patterns of plants, and even stuff about the chemicals in the soil.
So it's not just about what you can see, but like what the data tells you is hidden underground.
Yeah, exactly. Like infrared light can show the difference between healthy plants and plants that aren't doing so well.
Yeah.
And sometimes those struggling plants can indicate there's something buried underneath them, like maybe the foundations of an old being.
Wow. So it's like the plants are talking to the satellites and revealing secrets, huh?
Kind of. It's pretty cool.
So has she made any big discoveries with this technology? Our sources mentioned something about finding 17 pyramids in Egypt.
Yeah, that's the one that really put her on the map. But it also got her a lot of criticism, especially from Zahi Hawass, the former Minister of State for Antiquities in Egypt.
Oh, what did he say?
Well, he basically said that you can't just call something a pyramid based on a satellite image.
Okay.
You got to dig it up and confirm it first.
Right. Makes sense. So he thought she was jumping the gun a little bit.
Pretty much. He said those satellite images could just be showing natural land formations or even modern structures. You never know.
So round one goes to the skeptics. But Parcak must have found something legit, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. She had a lot of success mapping out the ancient city of Tanis.
Ooh, the one from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That's the one. She used the satellite imagery to map out the entire street plan. Streets and houses, the whole thing. And it was all hidden underground. Couldn't see any of it from the ground level.
Wow, so she not only found buildings, but also, like, figured out the whole layout of the city.
Exactly. And it turned out to be way bigger than anyone thought. Like 4 times bigger. So it really changed how people understood urban planning in ancient Egypt. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I'd say so. So it's like there's this whole city under our feet that we never knew about.
Pretty much.
That's amazing. So we've got one disputed claim and one big win. What else has she found?
Well, her team also found the lost capital city of Itche-Tawi.
Ichitoi.
Yeah, it was a super important city in Middle Kingdom Egypt, and it was lost for centuries. But Parcak's team used satellite imagery to analyze the old path of the Nile River, and they pinpointed the most likely spot where the city was.
Wow, so just figuring out where a river used to flow helped them find a whole city.
Yep. And the best part is that the archaeological community pretty much agrees with this discovery, so it really shows how powerful this technology can be when it's used correctly.
Okay, so that's another one in the legit discoveries column for her. Our sources also mention a possible Viking settlement in Newfoundland. That sounds kind of wild.
Yeah, that was a big deal when it was first announced. They found what looked like a hearth for processing bog iron in the satellite images, and then when they did some digging on the ground, it seemed pretty promising.
So did they find a Viking outpost in North America?
Well, not so fast. More research was done, and, well, it started to look less and less like it was actually a Viking site.
Oh, bummer. So no rewriting history this time.
Not quite, but even Parcak admitted that they needed to be cautious and do more investigation. And in the end, she wasn't really convinced it was a Viking site either.
So even with all this fancy technology, you can still get things wrong.
Yeah, it shows how important it is to be careful and not jump to conclusions, even when the initial findings seem really exciting. You have to follow the evidence where it leads.
Right. You can't let the excitement get ahead of the science.
Exactly.
Our sources also mentioned some work she did at a Roman port called Portus.
Yeah, Portus. She thinks she found an amphitheater there using the satellite imagery.
Interesting.
And the funny thing is, she's an Egyptologist. She specializes in ancient Egypt, but she noticed something in the satellite data that the Roman experts had totally missed.
Huh. So sometimes a fresh perspective can really help. Or maybe a fresh set of eyes, or in this case, a satellite's eye view.
Yeah, I guess so. It makes you wonder, maybe being too focused on one area can make you miss things in other areas?
Yeah, that's a good point. So is she right about the amphitheater?
Well, it looks like it could be one, based on what we know about how the Romans built them. But they need to do more digging and research to be absolutely sure.
So another potential win for Parcak, but still waiting for confirmation.
Yep.
Seems like that's kind of a theme with her work.
Yeah, like she's got this great enthusiasm and she's really good with the technology, but whether all these discoveries will hold up under scrutiny is still a question mark.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah,
But, science is all about constantly investigating and refining your understanding. So it's totally normal to have initial findings that need to be tested and analyzed further. That's part of what makes archaeology so exciting. There's always more to discover.
true, true. Well said. Now, our sources also talk about this GlobalXplorer platform that she started. It's supposed to let anyone become a virtual archaeologist.
Oh, yeah. Global Explorer, it's all about citizen science. Anyone with internet access can help out.
So how does that work? And does it actually produce any real results?
It's pretty cool. Volunteers from all over the world look at satellite images and try to spot signs of archaeological stuff.
Hmm.
And you know what? It's been really successful. People have found all sorts of potential sites like burial mounds in North America, ancient roads in the Amazon, pretty much everywhere you look. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's like making archaeology something that everyone can participate in, even if they can't go in a real dig. But do experts actually check the sites that people find online?
Yeah, a lot of the sites found on Global Explorer have been followed up on by archaeologists, and they've confirmed that the citizen scientists were right. It really shows you the power of technology and collaboration.
It sounds like Parcak isn't just finding new stuff, but also making the whole field of archaeology more inclusive. That's pretty impressive. Another point in her favor, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely shows she's got a bigger vision for archaeology, one that's more collaborative and global. But we got to remember there's still that criticism about her pyramid claims.
Right. And we'll definitely get into those controversies in more detail later on. But for now, I think we should leave our listeners with this question. Is Sarah Parcak really a visionary who's using technology to unlock the secrets of the past and get everyone excited about archaeology?
Mhm.
Or is there something else going on here?
Good question. So we're back digging deeper into the world of Sarah Parcak, the space archaeologist.
Yeah, before the break, we were talking about how she uses satellites to find potential archaeological sites, like the pyramids in Egypt, which some people weren't so sure about, and the city of Tanis, which turned out to be way bigger than anyone thought. And then there's her Global Explorer platform, which seems like a really cool way to get people involved in archaeology.
Right. And as we're trying to figure out if she's a real innovator or just good at self-promotion, it's important to keep all of that in mind.
Definitely. So let's get into some of those controversies. We know that Parcak has gotten some criticism, especially for that whole 17 pyramids thing.
Yeah, that really shows how she's always trying to push the limits of technology, but also how important it is to be really careful and make sure your science is solid.
So was she just trying to get attention? Like, was it more about sensationalism than actual science?
Well, it's possible. Remember Zahi Hawass?
Yeah, the Egyptian antiquities guy.
Right. He said that just seeing something on a satellite image doesn't make it a pyramid. You got to dig it up and actually confirm it.
So you can't just go around pointing at pixels and saying, look, a lost city.
Haha, pretty much. And some people think that Parcak focuses too much on big, dramatic discoveries and not enough on the slower, more careful work that archaeology usually involves.
But isn't it a good thing to make archaeology more exciting for the public? I mean, her TED Talk, where she talked about armchair archaeology, has millions of views.
Oh, for sure. She's really good at getting people interested in a field that some might think is boring. And Global Explorer is a great example of that, too.
Totally. But are we sure she's not just using all this for her own benefit?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Is she really trying to change the world or just build her own brand?
So on one hand, we've got people saying she makes claims without enough evidence. And on the other hand, we've got people saying she's a visionary who's making archaeology more accessible for everyone.
Exactly. And it's probably not as simple as saying she's either a grifter or gifted. I think she's a bit of both. She's brilliant and ambitious, and she's working in this world where science, technology, and public image all kind of crash together. It's messy.
That's a good point. It reminds us that even in science, there's always room for different interpretations and human error.
Totally. It's good to keep that in mind as we look at all this. Now, something else that's interesting is how outspoken she is on social media.
Yeah, our sources mentioned that she's gotten some flack for expressing her political opinions online. Is that something scientists should be doing? Shouldn't they be neutral and not risk alienating people?
It's a tough one. I mean, scientists are people too, and they have opinions like everyone else. But what they say publicly can definitely affect how their work is perceived.
So could having strong political opinions make people less likely to trust a scientist's work?
It's definitely a possibility, especially these days when there's so much misinformation out there and people are already skeptical of experts.
Yeah. It seems like Parcak decided that she couldn't stay silent, though. She wants to use her platform to speak out about things that are important to her, even if it means ruffling some feathers.
For sure. And it brings us back to the big question. Is she really trying to make a difference, or is she just using her platform to boost her own profile? We got to keep digging.
Okay, so let's change gears a bit and talk about her work protecting cultural heritage sites. Our sources say she's been a big advocate for preserving these places, both physically and digitally.
Yeah, she knows that technology can help us find these sites, but it also makes them more vulnerable to looting and damage.
Right, we talked about how satellite imagery could fall into the wrong hands. So what's being done to protect these places?
Well, GlobalXplorer actually plays a big role in that. By
Mhm.
getting volunteers involved in discovering and documenting these sites, Parcak is creating this sense of responsibility for protecting them.
So she's basically turning potential looters into passionate protectors. It's pretty smart.
Exactly. It all ties back to her vision of making archaeology more democratic and inclusive. It's not just about finding cool stuff, it's about taking care of it too.
Okay, so she's innovative, she's good at getting people involved, and she cares about protecting history. But is it all for show? Is there some kind of calculated plan behind it all? Or is she really trying to make the world a better place?
Those are the questions we're going to keep wrestling with as we try to figure out Sarah Parcak grifter or gifted.
Stick around, listeners, as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Sarah Parcak. And we're back, still trying to figure out Sarah Parcak, grifter or gifted?
It's the final countdown. We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, from those controversial pyramids to the amazing city of Tanis and that amphitheater at Portus, plus her work with GlobalXplorer and protecting those cultural sites.
A lot to think about. It seems like she's really pushing the boundaries of archaeology and kind of shaking things up.
Right, so let's try to put it all together now. Is she really changing the world with her discoveries, or is this all just a big act?
Well, I think the truth is probably somewhere in between. She's definitely a smart archaeologist, and she's great at getting people excited about the past. Plus, she's not afraid to use technology in new ways.
Yeah, and that Global Explorer thing is really something special, don't you think?
Absolutely. That's a great example of how she's using her platform for something bigger than herself. I mean, she's getting thousands of people involved in finding archaeological sites, teaching them about our shared history, and even helping to protect these places.
Yeah, it's really a testament to her vision. But we can't forget about those controversies either, like those pyramid claims that caused a lot of debate in the archaeological community.
True. And those kinds of situations really remind us that you gotta have solid science to back up your claims. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of a new discovery, but you have to make sure you're not jumping to conclusions.
So yeah, maybe just seeing something on a satellite image isn't enough to call it a lost city or a pyramid.
Exactly. You have to do the hard work of digging and researching and confirming everything. And that's where some people think Parcak falls short. They think she's more focused on the headlines than the actual science.
But isn't it good to get people excited about archaeology? I mean, her TED Talk has been watched by millions of people. She's got a real talent for making this stuff interesting for a wider audience.
No doubt about it. And maybe she's not just one thing or the other. Maybe she's ambitious and she wants to make a difference in the world, and those things aren't mutually exclusive.
Yeah, good point. It's rarely that simple. I think she's a complex person who's trying to do some really cool things, but also maybe ruffling some feathers along the way.
Definitely. It's up to each person to decide what they think about her and her work.
And that's what we're all about here on Grifter or Gifted.
Hmm.
We're not giving you the answers. We're just giving you the information and hopefully getting you to think critically about these things.
Exactly. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Sarah Parcak, we'll leave you with this. How do you balance ambition and making a positive impact on the world? When does trying to be successful become something less admirable? It's something to think about, not just for archaeologists, but for anyone who's trying to leave their mark on the world.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Grifter or Gifted. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the life and work of someone who's making waves and sparking debate. Until then, keep questioning. And remember, things aren't always black and white.